going to record for the other folks who can't be here, and we're going to get started. All right, so okay, so welcome. You are at the 7 Points Prep and Schooling Doula College Admissions Counselors workshop about launching your college application, and this is part 2 of a 2-part series. Last time we focused on opening a common application account and filling out those sections that you can fill out, the personal profile and family background, some of the education section. And we got interested in the idea that there was going to be an activities list in the common application and in the rest of the applications that are available to us. And so we learned about a way to flesh out the activities or the ways we spend our time using something called a BEABIES exercise or a BEABIES table. And so those of you who have been able to do some work on that this week can have a chance here to share that and get some feedback on it. If you haven't started that, you will have some time today to get into it. In general, the big idea is figuring out how to share the wonderful big key pieces of you and how you spend your time with a college or a university in an application. And last time we reviewed all of the components of a college application, your transcript, including your courses and your grades. There's also all of that family information, demographic information like we went over last time. There are recommendations from teachers and counselors. And right now, between now and the end of school year, is the right time to be asking teachers for recommendations. So you'll find that in, if you're a student who works with me regularly, that'll be in your assignments in Counsel More, is to identify those people and ask them, at least verbally, and then follow up with them either with the form that they need or with a form that you give them, an email that you give them. And so that's another part of your application. But a major component, in addition to your essays and your supplemental writing, is your list of how you spend your time. And we call that your activities list. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And the agenda is to, number one, remind yourself of what you've done already in related to listing out your activities and fleshing out the activities in the BEABIES table. Reviewing that list of 25 questions to help you brainstorm any pieces that you might have missed or things that you might have left out. And then doing a values scan. So we'll remind you of what you did last time with surfacing your top 10 and then your top 5 and then your top 3 values. And so reminding yourself of what those values are, checking in, do they feel present for you today? Are those still your top values? Are those the values that you want to be bringing to your college application? If so, you're going to scan your BEABIES templates, your activities list, to see if those values are coming through. And then after we've had some work time more independently, we're going to come together and do some group coaching about those BEABIES tables. A couple of people have agreed to share their drafts. And if you want to share a draft, because it's probably the best feedback you're going to get, this would be a great time to do that. And with those things together, we're going to do a values scan and a scan for the active verbs and for that impact section. And if we have time, we'll look at the insight and application to things beyond that activity as well. And then we will take a break sometime in there And then the last piece of this workshop is to move towards creating that activities list for the University of California applications or the Common Application applications. And some big exciting news is that University of Washington has decided not to use the coalition application. And so I'm not sure, they haven't announced yet if they're going to be using Common Application or what they're going to be doing. But we know that it's not worth it to open a coalition application at this point unless you've identified a school that only takes that. I'm glad that last week we focused on the Common Application in particular, with that news coming out this week from University of Washington. So big idea is to spend the majority of the time in independent and group work, fleshing out the activities and moving into an activities list. Any questions about the goal for today, the focus for today, the agenda? All right, so here we go. Connecting to how we started last time, your list of activities connects to that picture of you, the main puzzle pieces of you that connect to be that picture of you that you want to show to a college or a university in an application. And remind yourself by looking at your workbook from last time, by looking at your notes, by digging deep in your personal self about what are those most important pieces of you that you want to show to colleges. Did you get a chance to check in with family and friends? Did you get to ask them, when you think of me and, looking at me from a distance, what are those main key pieces of me? You might be surprised. If you haven't gotten a chance to do that, feel free to ask your family and friends about that and make sure that you haven't left out any key pieces of you or as other people see you. Because what's happening with a college application, remember, is they're looking to see if you are a good match with what they're hoping to create in their class. And they don't want everybody to be the same. They want some people with strengths in STEM areas, some people in strengths in humanities or social sciences or arts, some people in strengths with technical things, some people strengths with people relationships, some people with sports, some people with arts, some people who just love to do online gaming all day. They want a mix. And so you need to decide now how it is that you want to put yourself forward. So you can do some writing about that. You can do some drawing about that. Okay, and so last time we, in addition to thinking about that picture of you and the puzzle pieces, we made sure that you had a list of all of your activities. That might be in a list that you wrote in your workbook last time. It might be in your Council More Participation section under student information. It might be that you have a resume or you have a LinkedIn profile, or maybe you wrote it on some other piece of paper. But wherever it is, if you can find that now, or if you haven't had a chance to make one, now's the time to do it. Just make a quick list, not detailed, but what are the high level things that are on your list of the way that you spend your time from 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and by when you're applying, what will you have done, right? You can also, I don't know if you noticed this week, did you check it out with anybody else in your family? Because maybe there's something that you forgot, right? It feels like forever ago, 9th grade. Feel free to post a message in the chat in a private or to everybody, or to unmute and share about that if that happened to you this week, that you made your initial list of activities, but then other people helped you remember some other things that you wanted to add. Okay, and so then you have your list, and then you have the earlier work of thinking about the key pieces of you and what you want to put forward to a college. And I want you to reflect now on that list of activities. Does everything on there reflect the picture of you that you're trying to put forward in your college application? And ask yourself, is there anything that needs to drop off? Or is there anything that needs to get added? Because remember, these things don't have to be official activities. They don't have to be sponsored by another organization. They don't have to be school clubs. They don't have to be sports through a particular thing. Yesterday, I had somebody in the group who was talking about the time they spend hiking, and they don't do that through any particular organization, but it's something they do regularly. They love, they research, they find new places to go, and they spend their time doing that. And so there might be things like that for you that you spend your time doing that aren't officially sanctioned that need to get included. And then there might be some things that you spend your time doing or that you did spend your time doing in ninth or 10th grade or even currently that really aren't important to you. You did it to please someone else. It did not give you joy, and you don't want to write about it. And that can work too. So what you're trying to do is put together the picture that you want colleges to see about the key pieces of you and your key values, and think about what are those components. So right now, take a moment to do that. If you've got questions about that, I would love to hear them. You can put them in the chat privately or publicly, and you can unmute and let me know. Do a little wait time to see if there's anybody who's willing to share a question or a thought about this.
Yeah, so if I didn't get to do it, like the activities, because I was focusing on schoolwork, like when should I get to this?
Yeah, good question. If you do have a list of the big level things that you are spending your time on, um, pull that up now. If you don't already have it, right now while we're talking, make a list of just the things, just the names of things, right? Like this person yesterday, his list would have been hiking, work as a dishwasher, online chess, and family responsibilities. He had four main things that he spent his time doing, and that's all I want is a list like that. And then coming up next, we're going to be doing those templates called the BEABIES, and you're going to have some independent work time to do that right now. And you can also just be doing that. Like if something that I am, some of us can multitask and others of us can't. If you can, it's okay. I'm going to ask you, even though everybody's camera's off, to try to focus this time that you've set aside for this work on this work. Okay, so if you find yourself tempted, as I often am when I'm on a webinar, to spend my time doing something else, think to yourself, okay, I've set aside this time from 4 to 6 on Sunday to really help my college application move forward, and let me do that. Okay, I can always do the other things later. All right. Any other questions? That was a great question. And remember, you don't have to be worried that what you're doing or saying is okay. I didn't get to say this, but I really don't want people to do it on the Common App right now. Can you please find the workbook, and I'll post it again in the chat. There's a workbook for today. And if you could, awesome. If you could open that workbook, and there's a place on page later, let's say like page, I'm not sure, page 20-ish or so of the workbook, where you can be making a list. Okay, cool. Welcome if you're just joining us. I've posted the workbook for the project for the class today in the chat. Let's make sure I'm putting it to everybody. Here's the workbook. And If you're just joining us, we've summarized what we're going to do, and we're going to go on, and I will get with you in a one-on-one and we can catch you up, okay? Just coming up soon. Okay, so where we're going today is to be reviewing and revising and adding to your activities drafts in the BEABIES, the best extracurricular activity brainstorming exercise I've ever seen. And we're going to have some time to flesh those out, and we're going to then scan those for your values, for your active verbs, and for your impact. And I'm going to just quickly review for you where those things are and what we did last time. So in your workbook, on page 11 or so is the values exercise. And so last time we did that. And if you haven't already done it, I invite you to do this now, where you're looking through the list of values on the page and you're identifying your top 10, then your top 5, then your top 3. And so you're bringing those values to writing about your activities. And what we're going to do is look at your work and scan for values, okay? And so the activities BEABIES template table looks like this. And in the news section of the workbook, from page 16 on, there are some blanks there are several blanks, so you can use them to fill that out if you haven't already started working from that newer workbook. You can fill it out and feel free to start. And if you haven't ever seen this before, stick with me while I talk about the different sections. So for each main activity, not everything you've ever done in your life before, but the main activities that you want to make sure that colleges and universities know about you, be it work, sports, arts, family responsibilities, things, hobbies, ways you enjoy to spend your time. You select an activity, you put a name at the top. In this column, you put all of the things you did and you lead with verbs. You'll see the example next. And then you get to the problems that you solved, and they could be at any level of problem, the lessons you learned, the impact you had, and how you applied what you learned beyond that immediate experience. So many of you had a chance to do some of that, and I'm sure you have more work to do on that today. So we're going to give you some independent work time. And you can link to activities list verbs in a document. It looks like this. And so that helps you. It's there to help you find verbs that are as specific as possible. Not the ones that are the most general verbs you could use. Those are kind of ho-hum, boring. We want to have the most specific verbs you can. And there's this example. If you look in your workbook, this example is there. This is someone who did rowing. And then there's another example of someone who did Chinese dance. And then there are these 25 questions you can ask yourself if you're stuck on how to describe the things in the BEABIES list. And so now it's time for you to work on yours. What I'd like you to do is send me a private chat about where you are and what you're planning to work on during this time. And if you know that you are ready to share part of it, you can feel free to chat me about that too. So the thing I'm looking for is a chat from you about where you are with your BEABIES lists and what you're going to be working on. And if you have any questions or anything else, chat me, okay? If you're like, what? I have no idea what's happening.
I have a question.
Please.
Should we connect our values to the BEABIES?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about those top values that you have, and they should be coming through in your writing. Yes.
Okay, got you. Yeah.
Yeah. Glad you asked that. Thank you. Great. So I've got somebody who's working on the values and compiling the list of activities that they want to use. Great. And then they're going to go to the BEABIES after that. But that makes a lot of sense. Who else? Please update me. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to turn on your screens and let me know what's going on. Chat me now, or let's see what's happening. Thank you. Somebody's working on their BEABIES. Can you follow up with me about which activity you're working on that for? Okay, great. Looking for the list of values. The list of values is in your workbook on page, let me go there right now. Here's the workbook. And it's page 14. Sorry, I had said page 11 before. I think I added some things. Great. Great. Okay, so somebody is working on their third BEABIES. Great. And there's somebody who has a really good question. It's about whether they should include something. And so let me, that person, are you interested in sharing, or shall I summarize your situation? Okay. So this person knitted a blanket across 4 to 5 months. It took them 4 to 5 months to knit this blanket. And it was a big personal investment and a big learning experience, but not sure if they'd include it. So questions that I would ask is thinking about that, thinking about the big pieces of you that you want to be putting forward to a college. If it includes something about your ability to do independent projects or challenge yourself in new ways, or artistic endeavors, or potentially useful, like you like things that making useful things like a blanket would be. I could see that that could be something that you feel personal pride and you want to show that, right? Like it's a main part of who you are and you want to show that as an activity. If it doesn't fit because you've got other things in your activities list, it is something that you could write about and do a BEABIES on, because it might show up in a supplemental essay or in your personal statement. The work that we're doing here with the BEABIES can show up all sorts of places. It doesn't have to show up in your activities list itself. So the reason to do the BEABIES is both, yes, for the activities list, but also for future writing, right? Like I've said, with the essays and the supplementals. Does that person want to have an exchange about this? Okay. Yes. So right now, what we're doing is pulling up. So I'm going to go to the workbook. So if you haven't done the values, that's on page 14. You're doing that now. If you haven't started BEABIES, if you go to page 16 of your workbook, there's a blank template and you can start right there. Okay, and great.
Would you say that there's like a limit or like a minimum of like activities you should have, or what do you think?
That's I love that question. Um, well, so the common application, you're limited to 10. The University of California application, you're limited to 20. So that's the upper limit. For the lower limit, I think I think each one of you has at least one thing you want to share, and I'm confident that you have two things you want to share. I do think that having uh, Three or four is totally great. If you go up to 10, that also can work. It just, you want to be very clear that you're not just putting things on there just to put things on there, if that makes sense. That they really do help tell the story of you. Yeah. Does that help?
So yeah, what if you had like would two do it, but they're like very big commitments or whatnot? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think two is a good place to start. And we can always talk about if there are other things, but let's definitely start with two.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
start with one, right? One step at a time. Okay, about 4 more minutes for fleshing out your BBs. If you want to talk with me individually, just let me know in a private chat. If you've got any questions, things you want to ask about, private chat or unmute. Okay, in about 1 minute, we're going to be reflecting on our progress so far. Okay, so first of all, give yourself a pat on the back if you really did that. It's so hard in a virtual environment to know if this is a good use of time, but I have this to tell you that I have done some years of seeing people do their college applications, and the people who do this BB's process and flesh out their main activities that they're wanting to show colleges to, both in the activities list and the essay, that this is the thing that distinguishes between a just fine essay or activities list and a great one. So, way to go on doing that. And if you didn't get a chance to finish today, I would expect that that's true for most of you. And that this is just something that you can keep working on. And if I am your college counselor, it's something that I want to see a BB's template for each of the main activities that you're planning to include on your college application. And so if you didn't finish today, all good. But it's something that I want you to keep working on until you have finished before you do your essay writing. Okay. So, congratulations for working on that and pat yourself on the back for any one that you got, even started with, right? So this is just a lot of times it's about getting started, and you can always finish things that you start. It's just hard to finish something that you haven't started. So good for you for starting. So before you go on with sharing it with another person, I'd invite you to look over it, read it out loud with your lips. My son is always like, "Really, Mom? Do I have to read it out loud with my lips?" Yes. There's something about moving your lips when you read that triggers your brain in a different way to find errors, to find things that you might like to add more. So look back over that. Look back over those 25 questions. I'm going to go back up into the workbook. Where are those 25 questions? Let's see. On page well, the first time they come up is on page 12 of the workbook. There's also a table format on page 13 of the workbook. And you don't have to answer all these questions. The goal of this is to trigger things that you might like to add. You know, did you learn specific, and trying to get you to be as specific as possible when you're writing about your activities. Okay, so you look back over those questions, see if there's anything big that you missed. And then you can do a scan for your values. So look through, choose one right now that you have worked on and look through it and see if your values are coming up. And look for evidence. And you can highlight that if you're seeing some evidence. And then look at the active verbs in the what I did column. If you haven't already bolded those, go ahead and bold those active verbs. So you're scanning for your values and you're highlighting any evidence of your values, and then you're looking for active verbs and you're scanning them. And then if you've already done that, then you look at your impact and you're looking at like keywords that indicate your impact, maybe in the problem solved, lessons learned, application beyond. So you're not going to be able to do a thorough job right now while I'm talking, but this workbook sheet is what I'm thinking that each time you finish one, you'll do a scan for those things. And then when you're ready, you can ask for feedback from me, from Sarah, from a fellow student, from a friend or a family member, maybe from a teacher or a mentor of some sort, and you're asking them, and you could use this template or you can use something else that works for you, but this template is offered here for this use. Have them scan it and look for which values stand out to them. In the what I did section, are the verbs active? Are they specific? In the overall, is it clear sort of what you did in that activity? Is it clear what impact you have? And do they have any suggestions to help that activity tell your story? So I invite you to share that with me or with someone else. Okay, and so what we're going to do now is there are a couple of people who've agreed to start us off with sharing one BB's table that they'd like some feedback on. And it's a great thing. I applaud you for being willing to do that. And those of you who haven't yet decided to do that, I'd encourage you to consider it because it might be some of the best feedback you're going to get because we'll ask the group to reflect on values that are there and things like that. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's just make sure there isn't anything new in the chat. Nope. And so I know Kelsey and Ari have agreed, and maybe Preston has agreed to do one line at least. And thank you for everybody for being here and volunteering. Let's see. Ari, do you want to go? Are you able to?
Oh, I didn't finish the one that I told you I would share, but I'm almost done with
Okay.
it.
Okay. Would you be willing to share your progress? Because I'm sure other people aren't finished either and would be glad to see something that isn't complete.
Give me a second. I'm doing it on my laptop. Here,
Perfect.
someone else can go first, then I can do it.
Okay, great. All right. Kelsey, do you want to go ahead?
Sorry, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. I have a few done. Do you like?
You choose the one that you think you need some feedback about.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Ideally, for everybody, we're going to get feedback on each of them, but together, it'll be helpful, I think, if we can give Kelsey feedback on one that they're wondering about, right? Wondering whether the values are clear, wondering whether the verbs are specific and active, wondering if the impact is obvious. Okay, this first one?
yeah,
Okay, awesome.
it's the second
Okay.
one I did, but
Okay, yeah. Right, second one you did. Okay, just tell us high level about this one, and then we'll go ahead and do our value scan from this. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for being willing to do this, right? Everybody's giving a virtual round of applause. Yeah.
okay. So this is my riding. I don't ride competitively. I just like work on it. I've been doing lessons since like 6th grade. And so I like one of the big things with the issues was that in freshman year, I realized I wasn't like making any progress with my current instructor, or I guess now my past instructor. So switching instructors and then learning a lot more with like handling. And I got really into researching like especially with quarantine when I wasn't able to ride for a bit, like exercises and the physiology behind it, and then also like training because the mental part of how do you work with an animal and teach them things was really fascinating to me. So those were the big things. And then also, I'm typically a quiet and shy person, and you have to be more assertive, especially when working with like this large animal. So getting more confident was a big thing. In terms of like lessons, a lot of this is like work with with working with horses specifically, in training, like ending on good notes and like keeping going and trying to really understand the root of the problem rather than getting frustrated, and that applied a lot to like other aspects in life. And I did a presentation actually because of it in one of my classes, and I'm a lot more aware of like interacting with other people, similar situations. Like it doesn't help to take your frustration out on them. Um, yeah, and then I also am pretty invested. So I did my Girl Scout Gold Award on it, which involved some other like stretching and skills. Um, yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I invite the other folks who are in the group to reflect back using your voice or your chat. When you are looking at what Kelsey's written, so Kelsey just told us about it, and then there's a difference between what we say, and I'm glad, Kelsey, this is going to be recorded so you can go back and see what you just said about it, because sometimes what we say about something is different from what we've written about it. And so it'll be good to check that. But all of the folks who are in the room here, we can help Kelsey by looking over what they've written there and see what values come out for you. What do you think were the top values that they had when they were thinking of these things? And if you'd please put them in the chat, or you can unmute and share those. It's hard to tell since I can't see you guys. Are you with me?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like listening, patience, and courage were kind of things that stood out to me.
Listening, patience, and courage. Can you help me, Sophia? Where did you see those things? Nice.
Um, well, I was saying listening because she said that you kind of have to learn how to work with an animal, and by doing that, you have to pay attention to them and really like, I don't know, like body language and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said that translated with people,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. And then patience because it was really difficult at first, but to stay with it. So like a little bit of patience and determination to get the skills.
Mhm.
And
Thank
then what was the last one I said? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
me either. I didn't write them down. I'm wondering if, Kelsey, if you can be, while we're waiting for other people, looking for the evidence in the writing itself, because I think there's one thing about talking about it, and there's the other thing about the writing itself, about those values that were just coming up. Anybody else have any different values to contribute that they see? Thank you, Sophia, for speaking
I
up.
would just say like commitment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where do you see commitment?
Just being consistent with it, like
Mm-hmm.
writing weekly throughout the year, 3 years,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then just like I guess adversity, see that
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just trying to improve and get better.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. What else do people see?
I remember my last one. It was courage.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And I was gonna say, because a big animal, that's kind of scary, I think, for I don't know, it's definitely for me, but for probably a lot of people, and like starting with something completely new,
Mm-hmm.
can be very scary to like hop on. And then also switching a mentor can be hard because you feel like some sort of like you feel bad. I don't know, but like that could be a little nervousing. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But learning
Yeah.
to ride a horse, I feel like that takes a lot of courage.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anybody else have the values that stood out for them? Because it can really help Kelsey see what's getting across, right, in this writing. Okay. Kelsey, what were the values that you had identified that you were trying to communicate here?
Wait, let me look at my value list. But I knew with like in general for me with all of my activities, I really want to highlight like how much research I do and like dedication I put in outside of the actual activity, which I'm noticing I can definitely push that a little more with this. I don't think I wrote as much as I could with that. And then also balance since they're like having a lot of time commitments and trying to find that. And then with this one, definitely like the confidence and like listening and just like that development with social skills, albeit with animals, just like stepping out of my shell a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. So the next thing after the values scan, then it's the active verb scan. So let's go to the what I did column. And so will you please, Kelsey, since you're in control there, will you bold each verb, active verb that you are seeing there? And so we've got rode, learned, tacking and handling, experimented, worked, attended, right? Furthering your knowledge is kind of a verb, but maybe there is something more active that you could put there. Ideas are welcome from the group. I'm wondering about that first one, rode at least weekly. And I was trying to think of any other verbs that are more specific about that, but I didn't think of them. So if anybody has any suggestions about that, feel free. Learned proper equitation and tacking and handling. I was wondering if there was anything horse specific that is more punchy than learned, but it certainly is there. Anybody have any ideas there? Okay. Experimented with different styles and disciplines. I was wondering what that was about. Can you tell me more? Like, does it involve certain things that you do when you are doing that experimenting?
I mean, it was more like, so obviously there's like the broad Western and English, and then within that, there's like jumping, dressage, reining, like etc. And so it was more like with my first instructor, I wasn't really given a choice. And so with the one I currently work with, it's like I primarily ride in a certain style, but I will occasionally ride like in a Western saddle, or will focus on aspects from something else. And part of that was just to see what I liked, and then part of it is to um, like not get stuck in a rut and focus on what skills are necessary with those different disciplines, which you can apply across disciplines.
Okay. And so I heard you just talking about a lot of specific things about the different styles and what you actually do. And I invite you to list out those things that you do, right? Like um, ride with a Western saddle. I mean, I don't ride, so I don't know all the things, but it seemed
Okay.
like that statement about experimented with different styles and disciplines works for, the general activities list for sure. But let's say you were going to write an essay about this, you might want to have that more fleshed out, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
for
spend,
sure.
since you're spending time right now doing it, might as well just get it all in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it means to work from the ground and under saddle. Is there something more specific that you're saying
I
there
mean,
that I don't
working
know?
like
Yeah.
typically you just say that you're working the horse. So I think that's just like a very
Okay.
low level jargon, I guess. So
Uh-huh.
I can try and like rephrase it to make it more easily understandable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then attended shows to further my knowledge. I'm wondering, in what way did that further your knowledge? Is there something like, and do you have, like, you attended shows? It's like, I don't know. To me, as I hear that, I hear that you go and you're sitting in the audience to see what happens, something. I really don't know what that means.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean that is
Yeah.
essentially what I did, because I went to a
Uh-huh.
gaming show last summer because I don't have anything to do with the world of gaming, and I find it interesting, and like there's some controversy about it. So I was like, okay, let's go to a show. And I talked to a lot of the people there because they're like in that, I guess, circle.
Mhm.
And I got to learn about gaming, and I got to see people who actually game and sort of form my own opinions, because I do this research, but I don't like, it's different than actually going and talking to people who are involved in it. Yeah.
Okay, and so are you saying that, like, that you could add here some verbs, some work about what you did when you attend those shows? It sounds like you're quite involved in inquiry, like you're asking people, you're actively doing things to gather
Yeah.
information when you're at those shows. And
Yeah.
so I invite you to write about that, to add that
Okay.
to your list of things that you did. Nice.
Mhm.
I'm gonna for our purposes for the rest of today, I'm going to focus on the what I did section and the impact I had section, because when you're doing the shorter activities list thing, those are the two pieces that we focus on. So I'm gonna skip to impact I had, but then I'm gonna do how I applied what I learned, and then we'll move on. And if Ari is available to share, then we'll do that. Okay, so on the impact you had, by the way, on lessons I learned, it seemed really like very clear, a lot of the lessons that you learned, and I really appreciated that. So, uh, and then the impact that you had um, was one of three consistent riders keeping a horse sensitive to cues while beginners started learning. Um, I wanted to know a little bit more about that, like, and that's just because I really don't know anything about this field.
Yeah.
So what is it that you did? And I'm wondering whether that's in the what I did section. Like, what does that mean, to keep a horse sensitive to cues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about the impact, because writing to me
Okay.
is a very like personal thing.
Yep.
And I like more of the impact has to do with my gold award, since that was related to horses, and I was like, well, that's not really writing.
Okay.
But with keeping the horse sensitive, like with the lesson horses, they get shared, right? And so when you have beginners, they tend to like, they don't know how to balance themselves, and they tend to like bounce around and yank on the reins, not intentionally, but it's just
Mhm.
like the horse gets a little more dull to what you're asking them to do, because people will just like accidentally keep asking them, and so they're like,
Mhm.
okay, what do you want? um
Mhm.
and so it's good to have people consistently riding them who are maybe a little bit better. I wouldn't say I'm an advanced rider, but I'm good enough to where I can like keep the horse responsive to an aid by being more clear and precise. It's just
Okay.
like making sure you're not letting their training go to waste, I guess.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And so maybe, a second shot at writing about that clearly. But that's awesome. Great. I like that it's connecting to like the whole barn, or helping beginners. That's nice angle. Began exercising outside of sports themselves to improve my seat. That's cool. I'm wondering about that. Like personally, I was like, what exercises would you do? But that's cool. Engaged with new people at horse shows and improved social skills. Is there evidence of that? I guess I'm just wondering. There doesn't have to be, but I do wonder about that. And got some friends into riding and educated others. Both of those questions, I'm wondering, are there any numbers involved there? Could you say like, I got, is it like 10 friends or is it one friend or is it, you know what I mean? Like what's the scope? What's the range there?
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. Those are questions. You don't have to answer them right now for the time, but that's just something to take notes about. Okay, and then the how I applied what I learned. I was really excited and thinking for you that this could be something that winds its way into an essay, not just an activities list. If the connection between an activity that you do of writing to something where you've gone on and done a service project and a research project about rescue horses, where you're interviewing people, etc. And so I'm wondering if there's anything even beyond that, because you were talking to me about how you love research, and I think some of the things you said earlier that it connected to other classes that you were taking. So I'm just wondering if there's even more to this, that how you applied the things that you were learning from horses. Any thoughts there?
I mean, with the class, it's called Design Tech, and we had to do a presentation on anything we wanted to the class, and I chose like behavioral training. I'm gonna forget the exact terminology, like of the guy who came up with the theory, but it's like positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. And so I did my presentation on that because with riding, I became interested in the training aspect, and I was like, okay, what are these methods of training? And then because then I was researching it for the presentation, it turned out that like people use this with humans too, and that was how I found like the more overt connections there, and got more involved with that. I would say the Gold Award is definitely like the biggest application though.
Okay. But I'm just interested and would love to see that reflected, that other piece that you're talking about too, because I'm seeing because anytime you've got something that has multiple connections and extensions, then you can imagine that somebody reading it might be like, oh, okay. And then, this person's going to bring that big aha connection, that big so what, to other areas of their life. It's not just like rode and then did the Girl Scout Award. It's like, okay, they've now developed habits of mind that they will be bringing with them to our college campus and will be bringing that mindset to all the things they do. So the more you're able to connect to other areas, the better. Awesome. Great. Well, Kelsey, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to take a risk and share with us. And I'd be glad to follow up. And I know Sarah would be glad to follow up with next rounds of this. So great job. Anything you want to add before we go into Ari being willing to share a little bit?
I don't think so. I think maybe just like with the other people that we look at, with the impact I had, like especially the ones where it's not meant necessarily to be like a service project or a leadership role, just like being clear on how we can fill that in, I guess.
Right. That's kind of harder to think about that. I mean, and so you just do your best, and if there isn't a big impact other than like I feel better about myself, that's all good too, right? Like it doesn't have to be rocket science, but if there is anything that you have, great to put it in there. Good. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Ari, are you ready to go a little bit? And then we'll,
I think I'd probably rather just finish this.
okay. Awesome. Anybody
Bye.
else want some feedback? It's okay. All right. We've been here working for a good while. What if you haven't already? I was thinking that people probably took little breaks if they needed bio breaks during the work time. But why don't we take a 3-minute break and come back at about 20 minutes after the hour, and then we're going to talk about how to put BBs into an activities list and get some of that work done. Okay, so about 3-minute bio break or whatever you need. Come back at 20 minutes after the hour. Thanks. All right. I did get some questions in the chat, which I really, really appreciate. And there are people who do activities that are connected to each other, like playing soccer for school and then soccer for a club, or different kinds of art, photography, or painting. And should they be separate or should they be together? And so, from my perspective, if you have enough room to separate them, great. If you are having trouble fitting in your activities into the 10, then you can combine. So it just really is very individual. And I invite you to talk with your college admissions counselor, or your high school counselor, or your friends about, not friends probably. I mean, okay to talk to friends, but talk with someone who has some college admissions experience to talk about that. Okay, so I didn't have the recording on earlier, so I just want to say if you're watching this on the recording, please make sure to look at the slides in addition to the workbook, that'll help guide what we have done together. And I reviewed the 2 different kinds of activities lists that we're going to be focusing on in this session, the University of California and the Common App. And here on the screen are some highlights of how they are similar and different. And then in the workbook, people had an opportunity to turn some of their BB's work into draft activities list entries, in addition to doing the BB's fleshing out in the table. So all of that is in your workbook. That section about the activities list starts on page 2021 of the workbook. All right. So, in the last couple of minutes, I wanted to applaud you for coming and sticking with it on a sunny day, and at the end of the year when you're tired and burnt out. But I think you'll really, really be so glad that you did this, that you got the head start jump on your college application. You have officially launched it. You've opened up a Common App, or if you haven't already, you will do that very shortly. You have thought about what are the key pieces of you that you want to show to a college or a university. You've listed out all the activities that might be relevant. And you're in the process of considering which activities help tell that story of you. What are the key pieces of you want to be putting forward? I'm asking that you do a BEABIES fleshed out table for each of the key activities, including what you did and the impact you had and the insight you take away from that, including lessons and problems and connections beyond. And then after the BEABIES is done, because that will help you both with the activities list and also with the essays, then you can start doing the application activities lists where you're limited in the numbers of characters you do. I'd like you to do that off the application document first, and I'd like to make sure that you save your work because it can be used for so many other purposes in the college application process. When you're ready, share it with your counselor and beyond for feedback. In the workbook, there is a template that you can use for asking for feedback. And after revising and after you get approval, then it's time to go ahead and enter it into the application form. This, again, the activities section is a critical component of your application, and it's very, very worth your time. So again, great work. You have launched your college applications, and keep going because just one step at a time, before you know it, it'll be the fall and you'll be done. So coming up, we've got our next workshops, not next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, but the weekend after that. Some of you are taking the SAT, and then the fun doesn't stop. We've got, call it launching your personal statement workshops at the times that are listed there. And if you want to continue the work and have a dedicated time to get your college application components really very in good shape, we're offering 2 college application boot camps the week of July 18th and the week of August 1st. And we hope that you'll join us. If you haven't already signed up, in these slides, these things are live, and go to the link of where to sign up. You can also text or email me, Brennan, or contact Sarah if she's your college admissions counselor, and we can hand register you. So in whichever way works for you, make sure that you're signed up for the workshops that you want to go to. And you can just text me right now. I'll put my number in the chat. It's also right there on the screen, 206-631-1773 if you want to register for any of those workshops. I want to thank you so much for joining. It is the end of the time, so I'm going to say thank you and have a great night. And I'm also going to stick around if anybody has any questions or they want to workshop their particular questions or their particular work so far. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.